The fact that she had not seen or heard from April since the middle of the previous week did not mean that April had been gone for that long. It did not mean she was gone at all. And yet not a word in all that length of time, not even a phone call. With someone else, a week's silence might not be remarked, but April was the kind of person people worried about. Not because she was unable to look after herself, but because she was altogether too sure she could. The lamps were lit on either side of the door of the Shelbourne Hotel. They glowed eerily, like giant dandelion clocks. The caped and frock-coated porter, idling at the door, lifted his grey top hat and saluted her. She would have asked Jimmy Minor to meet her in the hotel, but Jimmy disdained such a swank place and wouldn't set foot in it unless he was following up on a story or interviewing some visiting notable. She passed on, crossing Kildare Street, and went down the area steps to the country shop. Even through her gloves she could feel how cold and greasily wet the stair rail was. Inside, though, the little cafe was warm and bright, with a comforting fug of tea and baked bread and cakes. She took a table by the window. There were a few other customers, all of them women, in hats with shopping bags and parcels. Phoebe asked for a pot of tea and an egg sandwich. She might have waited to order until Jimmy came, but she knew he would be late, as he always was. Deliberately, she suspected, for he liked to have it thought that he was so much busier than everyone else. The waitress was a large pink girl with a double chin and a sweet smile. There was a wen wedged in the groove beside her left nostril that Phoebe tried not to stare at. The tea that she brought was almost black and bitter with tannin. The sandwich, cut in neat triangles, was slightly curled at the corners. Where was April now? At this moment, and what was she doing? For she must be somewhere, even if not here. Any other possibility was not to be entertained. A half hour passed before Jimmy arrived. She saw him through the window skipping down the steps, and she was struck as always by how slight he was. A miniature person, more like a wizened schoolboy than a man. He wore a transparent plastic raincoat the colour of watery ink. He had thin red hair and a narrow, freckled face, and was always dishevelled as if he had been sleeping in his clothes and had just jumped out of bed. He was putting a match to a cigarette as he came through the door. He saw her and crossed to her table and sat down quickly, crushing his raincoat into a ball and stowing it under his chair. Jimmy did everything in a hurry, as if each moment were a deadline he was afraid he was about to miss. "Well, Phoebe," said, "what's up?" There were sparkles of moisture in his otherwise lifeless hair. The collar of his brown corduroy jacket bore a light snowfall of dandruff, and when he leaned forward she caught a whiff of his tobacco-staled breath. Yet he had the sweetest smile. It was always a surprise, lighting up that pinched, sharp little face. It was one of his amusements to pretend that he was in love with Phoebe, and he would complain theatrically to anyone prepared to listen of her cruelty and hard-heartedness in refusing to entertain his advances. He was a crime reporter on the Evening Mail, though surely there were not enough crimes committed in this sleepy city to keep him as busy as he claimed to be. She told him about April and how long it was since she had heard from her. "Only a week," Jimmy said. "She's probably gone off with some guy. She is slightly notorious, you know." Jimmy affected an accent from the movies. It had started as a joke at his own expense. "Jimmy Minor, East reporter at your service, lady." But it had become a habit, and now he seemed not to notice how it grated on those around him who had to put up with it. "If she was going somewhere," Phoebe said, "she would have let me know. I'm sure she would." The waitress came, and Jimmy ordered a glass of ginger beer and a beef sandwich. "Plenty of horseradish, baby. Slather it on. I like it hot." He pronounced it hot. The girl tittered. When she had gone, he whistled softly and said, "That's some wart." "When?" Phoebe said. "What?" "It's a wen, not a wart." Jimmy had finished his cigarette, and now he lit a new one. No one smoked as much as Jimmy did. He had once told Phoebe that he often found himself wishing he could have a smoke while he was already smoking, and that indeed on more than one occasion he had caught himself lighting a cigarette even though the one he had going was there in the ashtray in front of him. He leaned back on the chair and crossed one of his stick-like little legs on the other and blew a bugle-shaped stream of smoke at the ceiling. "So what do you think?" he said. Phoebe was stirring a spoon, round and round in the cold dregs in her cup. "I think something's happened to her," she said quietly.